Hey guys, I'm obviously not here today. So you are getting the lecture by YouTube. Carr, I am sorry that you are going to see this literally 3 times today. We're going to talk about mutual funds a little bit. Uh, we'll look at what is a mutual fund, what is it used for, how do you buy and sell mutual funds, why are they popular. So a mutual fund is a professionally managed group of investments. So when you buy a mutual fund, you make one purchase, but inside of that one purchase are probably thousands, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of different investments that go together. So you and I probably can never purchase more than a couple tens of thousands of dollars of anything. So it makes it super risky for us because we can't diversify. I can't buy one share of 1,000 different stocks. It's too expensive. So what a mutual fund does is it allows you to buy not a share of a mutual fund, but a dollar amount in a mutual fund. So my money gets tossed into the mutual fund and then we build it out from there. So mutual funds typically have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of investors. It depends on how big the fund is, and the fund just grows. And our money gets put inside of it and taken care of inside of it. The managers, so there's some guy whose whole life is doing nothing but taking care of that fund. And there's lots and lots of people typically that help them. And so they decide what to buy, what to sell, how they're going to go through everything. And there's lots of different types of mutual funds. They're great for ordinary investors like you and I because I'm not an expert on individual companies, but I can see who good fund managers are, who's doing a good job, and I can pick them and kind of ride that person to victory. There's some advantages to mutual funds. They're professionally managed. So again, you're getting the expertise of somebody that's whole life is this. They're very liquid. You can buy and sell mutual funds the same day. They're not as liquid as stocks. Stocks are instantaneous, pretty much how they're sold. Mutual funds are bought and sold at the end of the day. They're very diversified compared to the single stocks that we would purchase. And normally they require a small minimum investment. So now there's tons of different mutual funds, and some require like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some have no minimum investment. Like so, sometimes you have when you're picking a fund, you have to choose what the minimum investment. There's lots of different types of mutual funds, and this is just a very small like amount of the different types of mutual funds there are. So we're going to talk about these really quickly. You're going to fill out a worksheet and look for examples of these in a second. Um, the first type is growth funds. Growth funds are funds where the manager is looking for companies that are small or medium-sized companies and going to continue to grow on up as they go forward. These are things where we're looking for like companies with big capital gains. So like the stock price is going to keep going up in the future. From there, there are income funds. Income funds are the same thing as income stocks, like we're companies that have a consistent dividend. Income funds, they put a whole bunch of those companies together, and so what you get is a very consistent dividend over time, but low capital gain. Growth and income funds are the combo of the two. Another way to describe that is this is a balanced fund. So they are focused on both capital gains and dividends coming together. They're good things for like when you're in your middle age. Money market funds are the lowest risk funds. We talked about these as so it's still a mutual fund, but it more follows like very, very short term investments in currencies. They're very, very low risk. Global funds follow everything in the world. So they're not just US funds, but they actually follow like Japan and India and Europe. And you can get like certain areas, like you can have like just Australian companies or just Brazilian companies. There's 1,000 different types of you can follow. Index funds are what we can use to decrease the costs and drawbacks of mutual funds. So we talked previously about how we can judge the health of the stock market by looking at different indexes. So the most famous index is probably the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the S&P 500. You can buy a mutual fund that owns just shares of the S&P 500, like all the companies in the S&P 500, or all of the companies in the Dow Jones. And then as the stock market goes up, you go up, and as it goes down, you'll go down. So remember though, like it doesn't sound that cool, but the stock market historically returns around 6 to 8% annually. Um, so this is a way to know that you're going to get at least 6 to 8% a year, hopefully. So this is an example of the risks that we have. 1 second. Yeah, I sneezed. Um, things that are at the top are going to be the riskiest. Things at the bottom are going to be the least risky. So money market funds, no risk, very, very small risk. Income funds, you're always getting some dividends there. Growth funds are going to be at the top. Beyond that, so like we're talking like up in this range, we are going to have uh, like world funds, or like when you're getting more and more specific, like only gold funds or something weird like that. The prospectus is how you see what that fund is investing in. It is literally like a book, and it is about as thick as both my hands put together typically, and it is written in gibberish. It tells you what the terms are, what their goals are, who are the people that are managing it, how long they've been there, what funds they hold, what companies they hold, how much of it, all the way on the line. It's very, very, very difficult for a normal investor to. Unlike purchasing a stock, though, there are costs and fees from simply owning it. The very first fee that you have is going to be like a sales fee. They call it a load. So if you put in $100 and it's a 5% load, which is not unusual whatsoever, that means that you are going off of $95 as your initial investment because they just take $5 for you showing up. Typically, it's on the front. Some of them can be back-ended. Some of them are no-load funds. Um, one of the real villains about mutual funds are the fees. So another thing you get is the net uh, expense ratio. There we go. That is the fee that you get charged literally every single year, and it varies. Some funds have a net expense ratio of like 5%. So every year they're going to take 5% off. Other funds have a net expense ratio in like 0.08. It just depends on how actively managed the fund is, how much the managers are doing. So like an index fund, for example, is going to have a much lower net expense ratio than something that's like Brazilian cow companies mutual fund. Like that's going to be very difficult to manage, and so they're going to spend a lot of time looking at that. This net expense ratio is huge because if you're spending 5% every year in a net expense ratio, and the stock market typically returns 6 to 8%, if you have a bad year, you can really get hurt. And so you have to really pay attention to the fee that they're charging you every year if you're not going to get destroyed by it. Expense ratio is very important. Now, the mutual fund company is not guaranteed, and you're not guaranteed to make money with the mutual fund company. So what you have to do is you have to choose smart companies. So companies that have been around for a long time, they say 20 years or more. I'd say 10 would also be fine. You want to find companies that have a good record of returns, um, highly respected companies, um, things that you could go to that are not just like straight cyberspace companies are also going to be things that you should look into. For most of us, though, we're not going to be able to know that. Um, what's going to, it's hard for us to find that information, which is why we use Morningstar.com. Morningstar.com does a great job of putting all this information in for you. So what Morningstar does is they have these star ratings. So a 5-star rated fund means compared to all of its peers, it is better. Whereas a 1-star rated fund means all the companies are doing the same exact thing, funds are doing the same exact thing, it's doing the worst. So it takes them in by categories, breaks them down, and then says, this is good, this is mediocre, and this is bad for you. So Morningstar is where you need to go. So as you do your 401k research here, and as you look at these mutual funds, make sure that you're going to Morningstar and looking at the star ratings. If you guys have questions, just work on it. I'll see you guys next time.